Francisco from Amplify Latinx. Another amazing woman. Yes. Can you all hear me? Yes. No? Yes? Yes? Good? Okay. All right. So I want you to join me in a little chant for a second. Say, China. China. Mira esa China. Mira esa China. China linda, China fea. China linda, China fea. Those were the words that shaped my tortured childhood. I am Chinese and Puerto Rican. I'm Chino Rican from New York City. I grew up in New York, in the beaches of Añasco, Puerto Rico, and then later in the projects called the Chelsea Housing Projects in New York. And my childhood was filled with cultural pride, that Boricua pride that we all have on the island, but also shame of my economic circumstances. But that pride and shame is what drove me, created ambition, and helped me be who I am today, an amplifier of Latinx identity narratives and a promoter of leadership in our communities. So this is my mom, me when I was little, my baby brother Hector. My mom is Lourdes. And my mom is Puerto Rican and my father is Taiwanese. He doesn't show up here because I didn't see him a whole lot. And they met in New York City. He was a waiter in a restaurant. I don't quite understand what connected them, other than maybe it was the rice. I don't know. It was the rice, the arroz frito con spam. And you know, they often say it was unexpected combination. But they were, you know, I can see they were both poor. They came from big families, and they came to America for a better life. And so I remember as a child, with my mom, who spoke Spanish, really mostly Spanish to me, watching Sesame Street to learn English, and then going off to my father's restaurant, because eventually he owned the restaurant. And that was sort of my earliest memories. And then the memories of my father started to fade, because when I was 5, my mother had to move to Puerto Rico with my brother and I to live with her mom with my grandparents. So this is my little town of Añasco, Puerto Rico. And this is my grandmother. So we went to live with my grandma. And this was a time in my life where I started to develop a self-loathing because I was called the chinita. I was the one who was different. And it was literally like I was a show. Chinita! And that started to feel pretty bad for me. I would do things like put baby oil on so I could tan and get really brown. I would try to comb my hair and make it super curly so I could look like my family. I would sometimes go like this, stretch my eyes so that the hopes that they would lose my little Asian eyes. So this self-loathing was not natural, but I wanted to be like my Puerto Rican family, and I didn't look that way. So I felt like an outsider. I felt like I didn't belong. I started to feel, while very visible, invisible, because people didn't really see me for who I was. I felt so Latina, but yet I was looked at as this alien, this Chinese girl. So one day, my uncle, realizing I had this tortured feeling, takes me to the statue. This is a statue in Añasco, and Añasco is known as the town where the gods came to die. And the reason for that is because the Taino Indians, in this statue that's represented here, one day understood that the Spanish colonizers were not immortal. They could die because they could be drowned. So the Taino Indians started a revolt, a revolution basically, to try to kill the Spaniards or colonizers. And that's what this statue is. A little funky, but it starts to show this. And so my uncle, who I love, this was one of my uncles who I always said, I want to be just like you, who was this beautiful brown, had the curly hair. He takes me to the statue and he says, Betty, I want you to see this. This is the Taino Indians, and that's who you are. These were warriors. And I said, well, they died. They're so warriors, they would be around, right? He's like, no, but seriously, you are the perfect combination of a warrior You are black, you're African, you have a mix of white, you're Indian, you're Asian. That is the genetic combination, right, of your traditional ancestors. So stop this stuff about the Asianness and embrace it. And so it's the first time that I started to actually think, wow, I should love who I am. It's these two, but it was hard. It was definitely hard. So I started to develop this better sense of identity and passion for who I was. And when I was 12, my mother decided that she wanted to move back to New York. And I'll tell you a little bit about my mom. I know her as this incredibly resilient, strong woman. And I say that because she had serious mental health issues. When she was 18 years old, she got a full scholarship to go to the University of Puerto Rico. She was incredibly smart and creative. And she went and she started to get what we now know as panic attacks. She felt like she would get heart attacks, but these are panic attacks. And back then, they thought she was possessed, that there was something wrong with her. And so they would do, they pull out the santerias, the santeros would come. She would go to these different weird churches so that they can cleanse her of the bad spirits, the evil spirits. And I remember as a kid going to these churches, it was crazy that someone could just rid you of these evils, and there was no evil in her. She had mental health issues. She had depression, which caused anxiety. So she wanted to go back to New York because she thought she could get better health care there. So in going back, it was difficult. We struggled, and we lived a life that was poor. We lived in public housing. We needed food stamps. I remember the government cheese, all the good things you get when you're on public assistance. And one of the memories that really, I would say, has shaped who I am today, who's created this drive and ambition for me, was one day when I had to go translate at the welfare office for my mom. And the caseworker looked at me, as I was translating, trying to explain to her, look, my mother can't work, she's sick, she has depression. And the caseworker looked at me like, with this disdain, with this look of, you guys are takers, she's just lazy. And it was one of the first times I felt like I was taking a handout, that I was maybe using the system, or why was I here? It was the worst possible feeling to know that people view you as a lazy taker, as someone that needs help, that can't fend for themselves. And so it created for me an actual drive, right, to change our trajectory. And for my mother, she said, we're not going to be shaped by our circumstance. You're going to go to college. You're going to be the first one to go. And she had no idea how, because she couldn't even speak English that well. So she's like, ¿Qué es eso? So I had to figure it out for myself. But I think in being different, in being Chinese, Puerto Rican, not quite, I never quite fit in as being Latina enough or being Chinese enough, certainly for my Chinese peeps, I'm really not Chinese. I felt like I was an outsider, but also as an outsider, as someone that's different, I could get certain opportunities. And so I had many people that uplifted me. I ended up going to music in our high school for art because my teacher saw in me the creative spirit, and then went on to Bard College. And it was there, one of the first times that I realized that as a person of color, while you get opportunities, you also have to work extra hard to prove yourself. It's one of those lessons we learn as people of color. But it was also there at Bard that I felt like I could create a new identity for myself. I started to embrace both cultures and love both in equal amounts. So what I want to leave you with is a couple of things. Today the media creates a narrative for Latinos, for people of color, that is negative. We're deficits. We have all these gaps, right? Achievement gap, pay gap, wealth gap. And they don't see the contributions that we're making in today's society. In Boston in particular, Latinos are 20% of the population, right? A lot of the services that underlie this city are driven by Latinos, but yet we're seen as these deficits. So we have these challenges, but we're certainly not deficits. Now, indulge me for a second. Raise your hand if you come from an immigrant family. If you speak a second language. If you come from a single parent household. Right, so our society, our culture views these as deficits, as negatives, right? But speaking another language is an asset in today's global economy. We must speak another language. Being an immigrant or from another country gives us the ability to code switch, right? To go into different contexts, to be more resilient that way. And being someone that grew up in poverty, who didn't have a lot, we're scrappier, right? We know how to make things from nothing. So I would say we have an opportunity to reshape a narrative of ourselves, of our communities as assets, right, that contribute. So today, I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate lawyer. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm an investor. I'm also the co-founder of Amplify Latinx, which is changing the narrative around Latino leaders and cultivating that next generation of civically engaged leaders. And every day, I champion, I mentor, I advocate. Sometimes I resist, but first and foremost, I try to open doors. And so I hope that everyone today sees that same opportunity to create visibility for others who don't always fit that traditional mold of success, and know that we can reshape a new narrative that views us as assets, that can contribute to the betterment of society, and that values us as leaders who can uplift us all. I'm Betty Francisco, and this is how I amplify. Thank you.